over 250 people and over 80,000 dollars what came in. And I was particularly impressed because, as you perhaps know, the immigrant story was half of my family. It's a big deal, but also that just the idea that as I looked around the room, just about everybody looked like me, right? They were older white people. And I thought, this is something good. This is something definitely good. And so as Russell is looking at you, right? He understands, right? That you are also his audience. So anyway, thank you for coming. You can take it over. Boom your voice.
Okay. Hi, everybody online. Nice to meet you all as well. Thank you all for having me. I wanted to start by saying thank you. Because I know that this church, this faith community has had a relationship with New Bridges that goes back a decade, maybe more than that. The records that I have are a decade, but I'm sure the relationship's longer than that. So I stand on the shoulders of people that came before me, and that includes the director Alicia, who was there for 12 years. I've done my best. She departed in 2021 to fill her shoes and do what needs to be done for the immigrants in this community. I want to start just by asking you guys a couple of questions. So, anybody in this room ever given a ride to an immigrant family through the Bonita services? Thank you. That partnership, the work that you guys do, providing rides for most vulnerable community members is really, really important. I think you guys are all member institution of BIA now. Is that correct? Faith in Action now. So at New Bridges, we're following the developments related to transportation really, really closely. And yeah, I want to thank you for that partnership as well.
Right now, I don't want to miss anybody on it. We're doing our best.
So if I could, I want to tell you a little bit about my story, how I ended up at New Bridges, a little overview of what New Bridges has done in the past, where we're headed in the years to come. And then we'd love to have time for questions if that's okay. So I grew up as a missionary kid, and I spent some of my most formative years in Ukraine, in Kyiv, Ukraine. And really from the time that I was really young, it was really impressed upon me just how challenging it can be to leave your home, the country of birth, to step into a new context and just try to figure out what's up and how to make a way. And I thankfully had people who helped me. They gave me a very, very strong hand of support. And it's the only way I was able to have a life in Ukraine that even resembled thriving. When I was a JMU student, it was my very first time coming to Harrisonburg, and I was blown away by how diverse Harrisonburg was. I would go to the dining hall and I would talk with people from Belarus and Ukraine. There were exchange students from Kazakhstan, all over the world, really. And that Harrisonburg just became a place that I fell in love with. I moved away because my wife needed to go to nursing school because she felt called to do that work. And in 2022, after 9 years as a teacher, social studies teacher in public and private schools, I decided it was time to come back to Harrisonburg. Now, I'm going to assume you all believe in Providence. And I accepted the job at New Bridges in January of 2022. And then you know that the war broke out in February. The war in Ukraine broke out in February of 2022. So from the time that I first stepped into the shoes in the role, there was a way for the story of my life to fit with the mission of New Bridges, which is to form a thriving community that everybody can call home, and to provide some support for Ukrainians that were arriving to this area. Now, immigrants come to this area from all over the world, and sometimes there's this interesting distinction with our term immigrants versus refugees and asylum seekers. In general, it's helpful sometimes to know that there's a group here called Church World Service. Maybe you've heard of them as well. Church World Service is the refugee agency. They resettled the refugees. They're great. They're wonderful partners. But New Bridges was formed with a unique heart for the immigrants, right? The folks that arrive. They don't have those supports through Office of Refugee Resettlement, and they're coming looking for economic opportunities. They're seeking asylum, and that's a lot of the people that we work with. So Ukrainians when the war broke out, they were allowed to enter the US, but they were not designated refugees. So they were in a very strange place. They were given a stamp at the border that said they could come for a year minus 2 days, and they had parole. Parole means nothing. Parole is non-status. You're not considered admitted into the US with parole. So we were encountering Ukrainians who were coming to this community and were completely in limbo. And they didn't know what their options were. And that I would say that the first service of New Bridges that's easiest for me to share about is our immigration legal program. So we are an affordable and yet very reliable source of immigration legal representation. So, there's you may know some of the forms. There's a million of them. They have all kinds of different numbers. I-765, I-589. The list goes on and on. And we try to be a central source of information about what options are available to people. And then we actually can help provide them that support in a really affordable and reliable way. Now, for Ukrainians, this meant figuring out what options were available to them in a situation where no one knew. Across all the United States, lawyers are saying, what do we do with the Ukrainians? Can we file this form? And it was almost like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck. So we gathered as many Ukrainian families that we knew had arrived, did a mass filing event. So we sat them all down, we showed them how to file the forms. And in 2022, we helped 150 Ukrainians get work authorization. Some of them we even helped earn TPS, temporary protected status, to extend their stay. And now we're kind of the leading source of information on what's happening with their evolving situation. So that anecdote is really just personal to me. We also got connected with a group from the UK who were creating these psychological toolkits for children. These folks in the UK, they knew that children fleeing Ukraine were going to be experiencing bereavement and loss. They wanted to put something together that would allow adults in their life to talk with them about these challenging memories, these challenging moments. So I'll bring one of these. I've donated this to you guys. If you come into contact with any Ukrainians that might use some support, this is available to them. Thank you. Yeah. So, Ukrainians, that 2022 was really, there was a lot of work with Ukrainians, but you might know that our work for the last 20 years has been primarily supporting folks from Central America, South America. Spanish speakers would be the majority of our clients. And again, legal representation is a huge part of the need that they have, but there's so many other resources and sources of information that's needed to help understand how do you make a way here in the United States. So I brought this for you guys. I don't want to spend too much time in front of it, but we'll help folks who have been to the hospital and trying to navigate a really challenging financial bills. So culturally, the hospital in a lot of our clients' countries of origin is the place to go for primary care. So there's cultural factors involved in that, and yet then they have to deal with the business office, either if it's through UVA or from Centera. That I think is even hard to navigate for some of us. We help folks get their passports. We will fill out vital applications, even if it's for housing or for employment. We'll connect them to social services, the DMV. Oftentimes there's a ton of advocacy that has to be done because systems unfortunately aren't set up to be accommodating to people who don't speak English. They're not accommodating to people who might have trauma from their lives and their experiences getting to this country. So we try to be all that we can be for them in that way. We'll translate documents. Sometimes that one document getting translated is the difference between having status or having that driver privilege card or not. So we try to fill that for as well. That's kind of an overview of who we are and where we've been in the past. And I would just shift a little bit to talking about where we're headed in the future. So we have realized in the last in 2022 that the need for affordable immigration legal services was going to continue growing. And in fact, we decided that we wanted to be able to provide higher levels of representation. So what does that mean? We've always done our work in the past through folks that are called accredited representatives. They're kind of like a mini lawyer. that the DOJ gives a stamp after someone's trained and has shadowed under an attorney to do certain types of immigration work. And that's been great. That we've been able to do really, really good work through that. But there's some limitations on what the accredited representative do. And that's why this year we hired our very first attorney, full-fledged immigration attorney. And we hired somebody local, somebody that knew this community. He's been doing removal defense work, protecting people from being deported for a long time. His name's Steve Smith. And you guys ever met Steve before?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're very, very excited to have Steve on our team. It's going to enable us to offer new types of representation. And we're really recognizing that in this community, there's an immense amount of need for folks who have been trafficked. Who've been victims of either sexual or labor trafficking. And there is an immigration process that's available to them. It's historically been very underutilized. There's 5,000 visas available per year, only 500 used. And yet anecdotally, we know in this community, because we're on the 81 corridor, there's a fair amount of trafficking going on, sadly. So we're hoping to kind of take our program, our legal program, into its next phase. It's kind of a new evolution for us. And of course, we want to be able to do that affordably for our clients. We charge 1/10 of what a private attorney might cost for representation that we see as being at the same level of experience and expertise. And that's really, really important because unfortunately in this community, there are people who claim to know a lot about immigration work, and yet they're not accredited by the DOJ. They're not attorneys. They don't work on the supervision of an attorney. And yet they'll sell people a story about how, oh, yeah, don't worry, like we'll get you status. Yeah, just give us a few $1,000s. And yeah, just a few weeks ago, a woman came to us after maybe 2 years of being jerked around by one of these groups. She had given them, I think, $5,000. She had been told that she was eligible for status, and they actually never gave her a proper consultation. She never actually spoke with the attorney that was going to fill out her work paperwork. When she tried to inquire about what was going on with her case, she was actually told that she had to pay more money in order to get additional information. And then it all ended with a notice to appear, which means that she has to go to immigration court. We'll decide her fate. And so that kind of story haunts me. It keeps me up at night. It makes me think, man, if we had just gotten the word out a little bit more about who we were, if we had just been a little bit more able to provide, capacity for being able to cut against these folks who are doing this in this community, maybe we could have gotten in front of that. And we, unfortunately, we're trying to grow, trying to be better, but and we want to make sure these kind of stories don't happen anymore. So thankfully with Steve on our team, we're kind of in a new position to be able to offer support for those kind of people. And we'd love it if nobody ever, went to these groups again. So those are the kind of stories that I think motivate me. They're the reason why I want to do this kind of work. And I know that many of you guys share a heart for welcoming your neighbor, regardless of where they come from. You guys care about building this community into one where everybody can thrive. And so again, I'm glad to be here. Happy to answer any kind of questions. And of course, at the end, I can tell you some ways that you can partner with us if you'd like to further.
So what is your primary source of funding?
So we have been very, very generously supported by this community, primarily a lot of the churches, and we were founded by the Harrisonburg district of the Mennonite Church. And so a lot of those institutions still support us, as well as folks like yourself. And then private contributions are, a huge part of it. We're growing our grant funding. We're supported by the local United Way and the city government. We've asked the county government to throw their support in. We're asking the folks at Centera to throw some support grant funding in. But mostly those private unrestricted dollars have been huge for us, and they've enabled us to be really mobile, flexible. I think one reason why we were able to step into the situation to support Ukrainians is because all of our dollars were unrestricted. And so if it's Ukrainians that have a need or Afghans that have a need, we can do that. Great question.
Are you still housed in the community Mennonite or have you?
We are not. So we moved out of Community Mennonite in 2015 and have been working in an office off of Water Street. So
Okay.
just in between Beyond and Cubanburger. Welby Showalter's got his business there, and we're on the second floor of the Showalter building there, and have been there for 7 years. Although I will say, we are, as we're growing as an institution, looking for some new space. So if anybody has some leads, great affordable office space, let me know.
You know, there's another number of places that are open
Mhm.
and used.
How big is staff do you have?
So right now, we have myself, and we have Steve, our attorney, we have another woman who's an accredited representative. We have a part-time bookkeeper, we now have kind of a clerical and data management specialist, and then a couple of interns. So we're at 7 now, which is the largest we've ever been, actually.
But I take it that most of them are part-time.
Yeah, many of them are part-time, yeah, so 2 full-time employees.
You and the attorney.
are part of the
Yeah, that's a part.
Yeah, that's right. So we're hoping to revive our volunteer base, that kind of went dormant during COVID, like a lot of things, and looking for people, especially who are bilingual, who can help communicate with clients, people who could translate for us, especially in the Arabic or Swahili. Those languages are a little bit less common, but nevertheless, those people do come to us for services. And also people who are just good at filing, clerical work. It's so important for us to have really strong, accurate, well-kept files, for legal reasons.
You work with Skyline Literacy, if the clients need the English language training.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
I mean, you don't offer it yourself, but you refer them to Skyline then?
That's right. Yeah, Skyline is a great partner because not only do they do the English language training, but they also have citizenship preparation courses. So they'll often be the ones that will get them ready for the test, and we'll be the ones that will help them with their paperwork and see them through the ceremony.
Are you aware of our closed closet?
Tell me more. Maybe I've heard of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I can show you a little later.
Sure.
Trinity has run a closed closet since 1965. Kathy here is our main boss, so to speak. And we have clothes coming from all over. The clothing is free. We open every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30. In fact, I was suggesting a couple of weeks ago, that we get out a brochure or something like that. It was just a few years ago that we were figuring that we had 5 different people from 5 different countries and 5 different languages coming to our closed shop that one night.
That's great. Yeah, we're actually in the process of updating our resource guide. So when folks, they'll call us for all kinds of things, just because we kind of have, thankfully, a bit of institutional trust. So we're always trying to figure out where to send folks for food or baby needs or clothes. And so, yeah, that kind of information would be great to add to our reference guide.
And we also have a pamphlet that has different places you can go for free diapers. And we once a year call all of them
Great.
to validate that they do. Some of them only give to certain types of need. But I can share that with you as well.
Yes, please. Yeah.
And actually, we have a listing from Strength and Peers. Has a whole page, both sides of various places where you can get things to do things and that kind of thing.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen over the course of the last year in my role is that there's, an immense amount of groups in this community that are, ready to support and meet the need. And coordination of all that is one of the things that I think we could all do a little bit better. How do we all make sure we're on the same page? And I know the Great Community Give is coming up. We're excited about that. We're hoping to raise $30,000 that day. And there's like 150 nonprofits that are participating, which I think is wonderful. But there's also a lot of groups to keep track of. If you're looking for services, like diapers here, food here. So that's good. Everyone wants to pitch in.
How do you see yourself expanding then? You mentioned the increasing the services that you provide.
Yeah. So the number one way that I would see that we're hoping to grow in the next couple of years is to continue to add legal professionals to our staff. So we could probably do up to 500 cases per year if we had the people to do it. And keep in mind, some cases take an hour to do it. If we're gonna help someone renew their DACA, their deferred action for 12 months, we can do that in about an hour. But if we wanted to help someone become eligible for one of these trafficking victim visas, that would take us about 30 hours of work. So it's not always necessarily about the number of cases, it is more about the quality of care and the type of representation that you provide. But we'd love to go from one attorney to two attorneys to a team attorneys, and really one of the things that motivates that is if you look at the map and you look at where there's affordable immigration representation, if you go north, you have to go all the way to Annandale, really, to find a group. There's a great group, Just Neighbors. They are wonderful people, the big Methodist church initiative. And then you got to go all the way to go south. You got to go all the way down to Rome to find a group that's quite like ours. And they only have one person on their staff. And if you go east, you go to Charlottesville, it's almost like you're in a different world over there. So if you're looking at the 81 corridor, we really want to fill the need that we see. It's West Virginia. There's no immigration legal services providers. People come over the mountain to us. So we would love to grow in order to be able to, every call that comes in is, oh, hey, yeah, we can do that kind of work here. And we see an immense amount of support needed for asylum, people who are seeking asylum, whether that's the affirmative asylum process. They've been entered in the US some way legally, and then they're looking for it, or they've come in what we call EWE without inspection, but they're eligible for us, they have a valid asylum claim. And a lot of people who, they don't know that they have a really good asylum claim. They might not know that they're eligible for a victim of a crime visa or a domestic violence visa. And so oftentimes these people are living in the shadows when if representation was available and it was affordable, they could make a life here and have legal status and eventually become citizens.
JMU does not have a law school, right?
Correct.
But Washington D has.
They do.
Have you ever approached them about internships or public defending work? I don't know if they're into it or not, that some law schools do and some don't.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. They have an immigration clinic, and they have about 5 students in that immigration legal clinic that do some immigration work. And we actually are working with one of their students to be an intern with us in the fall. But their program is not quite big enough to meet all the need. And again, they do great work. They train great lawyers there. But yeah, we need to kind of stir up a little bit more of a heart for the what we call public charge and work. Yeah, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering what kind of cases Steve Smith is able to do now, because his work previously in the private practice was essentially prevention of removal or dealing with trying to do.
Yeah, so as an attorney, he can do all kinds of legal immigration work. And so we're kind of in a little bit of it's still a transition phase because they just joined, but we'll be able to selectively take on some of these higher order level cases. But we also still do all the family petition, bringing a family member over and all that. But yeah, Steve has the ability and the capacity to do all kinds of work. It's just about, how do we make sure our one, the lawyer is well taken care of and the long term. And, there's a great deal of secondary trauma that we feel as a staff. And recently we were preparing a client for their asylum hearing. We do a mock asylum, and so we have one person who is the attorney, and that's Steve, and one person who's the ICE attorney, the bad guy, and that's usually me. And then there's the judge and the interpreter, and my role in those settings is to basically quiz the person, try to catch the person having a hard time telling the story about the hardest day of their life, right? And we know that by doing our due diligence there, we're helping them, be prepared for their hearing, but to sit there and say, so on what hour of the day did you came across the body of your killed, murdered family member, and And so we as a staff are always trying to, how do we care for each other? How do we ensure that, doing this work sustainably is so hard. The turnaround time, the burnout rate for folks who work in immigration advocacy, immigration legal work is, it's like 1.5 years, 2 years. And so if you want to build something sustainable, you've got to really care for your staff and, build systems that protect everybody.
How can we help do that?
I did not pay her that.
It's required. No, but if you had, okay.
I mean, frankly, the biggest way that we can do that is love to have a fund for our staff where they can get counseling and that it's covered by the organization. That's a dream right now, that if I could go to my staff and say, hey, here's a stipend. You guys can use it with any practitioner in town that you want or out of town that you want. And we hope it's to your benefit, and that would be huge. That's a dream of mine. So if anybody would like to support it, maybe you're a counselor, maybe you know a counselor that wants to donate to our staff. That would be wonderful. Just that, yeah, because you really need someone to talk through what you just heard from that person.
Sure.
Yeah, that's one way. Obviously, if we can grow our general pool of funding for our immigration legal program, and we can spread the work out amongst more practitioners. If we can get folks in the private bar, perhaps we have a legal fund that's held at the community foundation. And if folks in the private bar want to do immigration work, I don't want to pick on the private bar too much. There's a lot of really good attorneys in this town, but a lot of them don't want to do immigration work. They have their reasons, but if we could get the private bar excited about doing some more pro bono work, if we could get them to do some low bono work, that would be really wonderful as well. So if you know attorneys, that's also a great way to do it. Thank you for asking that.
I was going to ask if you had some idea of ways we could raise our sensitivity to their needs. I'll give you an example. The day COVID closed the United States government, I put somebody at immigration court in Arlington. And we walked in and the signs were up and oh no. And I was standing there and the guy came up to my right. He says, I'm Judge Spaeth. And if you want to come down to my courtroom, I'll be giving you, right, future appointments, right? We'll take care of that right now so that you leave knowing when you need to come back. And so we went down there and there's a translator and I'm watching the woman speaking Spanish and the person I'm taking there, she's watching the judge speaking English. And I thought sooner or later this is all going to make sense. He said, in the back there, as you're leaving, you can find out when your return date is. So we've written them down. And so we went back there and I looked at it. It was 8 months out. And I had a very middle-class white reaction. 8 months? Are you kidding me? Right? And she went, it was me. 8 more months I had. It was elated. That was a shift. Okay, in other words, there are different perspectives, right? And I think that that's something that we, as we interact with people in the world, that we need to be aware of. That's how we do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think I would answer your question by just saying that I think we all as individuals can help. We, maybe hear an offhand comment about, people that don't belong here or, have no right to be here, I think it's easy to throw around, and I think it's easy to, how do I say this delicately? I'll put it in a more positive light. I think we have, with a sense of information, we have a responsibility to help people who don't understand what someone who fled their home country and crossed the border without inspection might be experiencing, and what those factors are, the push and the pull factors, and to help that person know that there's all kinds of terminology that we use that just really isn't accurate. And there's all kinds of myths that we can help deconstruct. I was really struck early on in my time at Newport is by just the immense amount of contributions that folks who don't have status make to our community, and they pay sales tax, right? They make food, right? They clean things, and yet they are not the recipients of any of the benefits, right? That's the social contract, right? Is that we put in and we receive something out, and many of our neighbors are just, they're doing the contributing and they're not eligible for any of the support. And I think that's a great injustice. I think that we have to always talk to people and frame things in a way that they can understand it, kind of support their worldview. But we're looking at historic unemployment. And then at the same time, there's a federal judge in Texas who's considering ending the program for deferred action for childhood arrivals. So you do that, you take about 1 million people out of your labor force. People that have lived here since they were children. All they've ever done, they're not criminals because you can't have DACA if you're convicted of crime. So all they've done is they've gone to school and they tried to make a life for themselves working legally. And you would end a program like that in this kind of economic climate. And so, yeah, we have work to do, I think, in this community just to advocate for the rights of our community members. I don't know if I answered your question, Mark, but yeah,
That's as good as one can
yeah.
do.
But some asylum hearings are 5 years away. So can you imagine that? You get your first date, okay, 5 years from now, we'll come back and we'll wrap this up.
Well, the thing is, if you make somebody, give people papers to allow them to work legally, they're also paying social security taxes without the prospect of benefiting from social
That's
security.
exactly right.
No.
Yeah,
I have to thank them for that.
you're right. That's right. And a doctor recipient, again, who's doing all these things, isn't eligible to vote.
Yeah.
So they don't have the voice to even contribute to the process that would affect their status in the long term. So, yeah, there's advocacy that needs to be done, I think, nationally, here locally as well, and yeah.
I think you mentioned earlier that you're getting support from the city, but you're working on the county. Right, but you're not getting much from the county of Rockingham.
We don't currently have any funding.
Is that would you say that's also a legal statement?
I mean, I don't think we're open doors, but very minimal.
Yeah.
And, yeah. When the free clinic was founded, county, it was the, they didn't know.
Well, that's why Valley Interfaith Action is working with, I think it's struggling with the county representatives, the county supervisors. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't speculate as to the private motivations of the leaders of the county, but I'll just look at what the color of the map looks like.
Yeah.
Maybe draw some conclusions. All right.
Very diplomatic.
We try. You guys are asking great questions.
I have a question. So a couple of years ago, Wendy Sale, and I, as representatives from the Sanctuary House Group, went to visit legal aid in Charlottesville. And I can't, it's legal aid in this. Yeah. And at that point, they were talking about expanding, and we tried to get them to think about expanding to Harrisonburg. But they, of course, were doing a whole statewide look at where there were gaps, and I think they were looking primarily at the Virginia Beach area. Yeah, and of course, they have clinics that are supported through UVA, faculty and legal students and law students and all of that. More of the corporate and the money that's falling into it. Which of course is a significant to us, and it was a very informal kind of talk. It wasn't anything high level at all, but is there any way in which you bridges with this has a long history now, and it's very pretty established within the community? Is there any way that agencies of this kind partner with other agencies that then give the broader umbrella for if the community have a full-time fundraiser and, you know, things like that. But
Yeah.
is there any kind of that sort of talk on the horizon, or is that, or are we still in this sort of individual?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yes, we are looking at ways that we collaborate with the folks who are bigger than us. One of those groups is Just Neighbors. They have a rural access program. So one of their attorneys comes down and hosts a clinic here one day a month. That's great. And, we want to find ways to help stretch resources that they have and that we have. The folks that I find it's really interesting. When you go over to Charlotte and cross over the mountain, they do kind of see themselves a little bit in a different world when you're there. But yeah, we're yeah, we do want to work on that. Simon Sandoval, who's the director of legal, we're connected, and so yeah, she's figuring out how to make that work, and yeah, a great idea. I don't know how long you guys usually go.
Go ahead and you want to wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just kind of say in conclusion, that when I come to talk to a group like you all, feels very comfortable. It feels very, I know from the sign that you guys have outside and from what I've learned about the work that you guys do, it's very, very comfortable, and it's really encouraging. Because when you know that you're not alone in this kind of work, it makes it easier to get out of bed in the morning and give your all the work. So I just wanted to say again, thank you for you all and your heart for this community and what you're doing very practically to make a difference in people's lives. If you'd love to, we'd love to be more closely connected. I'd love to talk with all of you guys more individually. If you'd like to do that, please let me know. And of course, your support, your financial support is very meaningful to us. And if you feel moved to give more, increase your commitment, gosh, that would make my day. And so, I'd be happy to tell you how to do that as well. And I'm excited to continue sharing news that, we having our first attorney, like I said, is a very, very exciting piece, step for us. And we know it's going to open up a lot more doors and a lot more partnerships and collaboration. So again, please stay connected. We've got our email list and our mailing list and all of that. So I'd love to have you be closer to the New Bridges family. So thank you for your time. And more questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
One question.
Sure.
You have bilingual therapists that you recommend people to, or the agencies that you can. Didn't seem like there were too many. I was able to find a bilingual therapist at the community counseling center.
Okay. That's one place where we know of one active former New Bridges employee is over at the community services board. But I think the Fairfield Center might have one. It's not, it's hard to find. I mean, tons of services, language access, new challenges. HCHC, they're doing their best, but it's about a year for a new appointment over there.
Yeah.
The Blue Ridge Free Clinic is doing their best, but their hours are so limited, and we'd love to have more interpreters. There used to be AHEC in this community. You guys know about AHEC? AHEC was a translation service provider that was funded through JMU and partly through Centera, and that program was discontinued, and now Centera is doing all their interpreting on their own. So there's not like a community interpretation pool like there used to be. A lot of the folks that work there are kind of just doing it on their own, one-off. There's not really a central source for going to find, hey, we have somebody coming in, we know it's Kurdish, Sorani. You guys have anybody like that? So that kind of resource is really valuable.
How do you deal? How do you? Deal with languages when you don't have it.
Yeah, unfortunately, you rely on these really annoying phone interpretation services or telephone, and they can get the job done, or you do Google Translate. Thankfully, at New Bridges, there's through the years had someone who could do Kurdish and Arabic, and for a long time, we had a Kurdish and Arabic guide. There's one woman in the community that knows Swahili, and so anytime Swahili comes up, we ask her, so. Yeah, just kind of through informal contacts and networks is the way we've done it. Okay, well, thank you all again.